Superman rocketed back to Earth. He had been gone for 5 long years. His heart pounded with anticipation. He longed to see the familiar sights of Metropolis. He missed the bustling streets and the comforting rhythm of city life. Most of all, he yearned to see Lois. He landed softly on the balcony of his apartment. It was just as he had left it. Superman took a deep breath and used his key to open the door. He stepped inside, his cape billowing behind him. The apartment was empty. Lois was gone. A wave of dizziness washed over him. His super senses picked up a faint, familiar scent. He followed it to a framed photograph on the nightstand. It showed Lois, her smile radiant, holding a young boy with Superman's iconic black curls. Superman's world tilted on its axis. Lois had moved on. He had a son. 5 years had changed everything. Superman flew towards the Daily Planet building. The familiar globe atop the building was gone, replaced by a sleek, modern structure. He landed on the rooftop, his cape swirling around him. The door to the roof access opened. A young man with sandy hair and glasses looked up in surprise. "Clark? Is that really you?" Superman smiled, relieved to see a familiar face. "It's good to be back, Jimmy," he said. "Is Lois here?" Jimmy looked down, shuffling his feet. "Lois left the planet a couple of years ago," he said. "She's a freelance journalist now. She and her son, Jason, live across town." Superman's heart sank. Lois had a new life, a life that didn't include him. He had been gone for too long. Meanwhile, in a secret lab deep underground, Lex Luthor surveyed his latest invention. It was a device of immense power, capable of shifting tectonic plates. Luthor's eyes gleamed with manic energy. He intended to reshape the world in his image. He had waited years for this moment. Superman was gone, vanished. The world was ripe for the taking. Luthor pressed a button on his console, and a low hum filled the chamber. Superman tried to focus on his work at the Daily Planet. It was strange being Clark Kent again. He was a stranger in his own life. Everyone treated him with a mixture of curiosity and pity. It was clear they knew about Lois and Jason. One day he was interviewing a scientist about strange tremors shaking the city. The scientist mentioned a theory about unusual energy readings. He called it the Luthor Equation. Superman froze. Could Luthor be back? He excused himself abruptly and flew to the outskirts of Metropolis. He had a hunch. He landed near a deserted construction site. The energy readings were off the charts here. He knew in his gut that Luthor was behind this. Suddenly the ground began to tremble violently. Buildings swayed precariously. A giant landmass erupted from the earth, rising higher and higher, threatening to tear Metropolis apart. People screamed and ran for their lives. Superman knew he had to act fast. He saw Lois and Jason on a collapsing overpass. They were trapped. He flew towards them, his heart pounding. Just then, a figure shot past him, scooping them both up in strong arms. It was another man, dressed in a suit similar to Superman's, but black and silver. The man landed safely with Lois and Jason. Lois looked up at him, her eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," she breathed. "Who are you?" "You can call me Richard," the man replied with a wry smile. "A friend." He glanced up at the sky where Superman was battling the monstrous landmass. "Looks like your friend could use a hand." Section 6. Triumph and Tragedy Intertwined. Superman fought with all his might. He pushed against the landmass, trying to force it back into the earth, but it was too powerful. Luthor's machine was amplifying the seismic energy. He saw Richard join the fight, his strength and powers remarkably similar to his own. Together they managed to push the landmass back, sealing the chasm. The city was safe for now, but the victory was short-lived. As Superman turned to thank Richard, a stray energy blast from the collapsing machine struck him from behind. He fell to the ground, his vision fading. The last thing he saw was Lois rushing towards him, her face etched with worry. Section 7. Awakening to a New Reality. Superman woke up in a hospital bed. Lois was by his side, holding his hand. He was weak, his body still recovering from the energy blast. He looked at Lois, his heart aching. "Lois," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry, I should have been here." Lois squeezed his hand gently. "It's okay, Clark," she said softly. "You're here now, that's all that matters." She hesitated, then added, "Jason, he knows about you. He's been asking about his father." Superman felt a surge of emotion. He had a son who had inherited his powers, a son he barely knew. Section 8. Fatherhood Found and a Promise Made. The next few weeks were a blur. Superman learned about Jason, his powers, and his love for science. He spent hours talking to Lois, trying to bridge the gap of 5 long years. It was awkward at first, but slowly they began to reconnect. He learned that Richard was a Kryptonian too, sent to Earth as a baby, just like him. He had been raised by a loving family, unaware of his true heritage until his powers manifested. One evening as the sun set over Metropolis, Superman stood on the balcony of his apartment with Lois and Jason. He wrapped his arms around them, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. "I'm not leaving again," he promised, his voice filled with emotion. "I'm here to stay, this time for good." Section 9. The Guardian Returns. The next day, Superman soared high above Metropolis. He looked down at the city, his city. It was a city that had learned to survive without him, but a city that still needed him. He was no longer just Clark Kent, the reporter. He was Superman, the symbol of hope, the guardian of Earth. He had a family now, a purpose, he was home, and he would never leave again.